Bienvenidos! Welcome everybody! Today we're going to be working in translating questions from English to Spanish. In my opinion, questions are a lot easier to build in Spanish. Let's begin with the first one. What are you doing? How do you say what in Spanish? ¿Qué? ¿Qué? And how do you say are you? Estás. Estás. We don't need to use the personal pronouns in Spanish, so we can leave it out. And doing is haciendo. Haciendo. ¿Qué estás haciendo? Normally, if I were to add the personal pronoun, I would add it at the end of the question. ¿Qué estás haciendo tú? ¿Qué estás haciendo? All right, how would you say what were you doing yesterday? How do you say what? ¿Qué? Where you becomes estabas. Estabas. So we're just conjugating the verb to be in past tense for the pronoun you. How do you say doing? Haciendo. And yesterday? Ayer. ¿Qué estabas haciendo ayer? ¿Qué estabas haciendo ayer? So how would you ask, what did you do yesterday in Spanish? What is ¿qué? Here, the you do, all of that becomes hiciste. Hiciste. We don't need to use the helping verb in Spanish, so did is not needed because hiciste is already conjugated in the past tense for the second person, and that's all we need. Yesterday is ayer. ¿Qué hiciste ayer? ¿Qué hiciste ayer? How would you ask the question in future tense? What will you do tomorrow? How do you say what? ¿Qué? And here, will you do, all of that becomes harás. Just like before, harás is conjugated in future tense for the second person. And how do you say tomorrow? Mañana. ¿Qué harás mañana? ¿Qué harás mañana? The next question is, what do you do in your free time? We know that what is ¿qué? And here, do you do, those three words become haces. Haces. Haces is conjugated in present tense for the second person singular. And your free time is en tu tiempo libre. ¿Qué haces en tu tiempo libre? ¿Qué haces en tu tiempo libre? It can be a little bit confusing because of the extra helping verbs in English that are not present in Spanish, at least in this case. But just remember that you use the question word, the verb conjugated to the tense that you're trying to say, and the person, and then the complement. I forgot to mention that in Spanish, when you're building questions, you have to open with a question mark. Let's look at another set of examples. How would you say, where are you in Spanish? How do you say where? ¿Dónde? And are you is estás. ¿Dónde estás? ¿Dónde estás? And how would you say, where were you last night? We start with ¿dónde? And where you becomes estuviste. Estuviste. Last night is anoche. ¿Dónde estuviste anoche? ¿Dónde estuviste anoche? And to ask the question in future tense, where will you be on the weekend? We start again with ¿dónde? We have to use to be conjugated to the future tense, which in this case is estarás. Estarás. On the weekend, el fin de semana. ¿Dónde estarás el fin de semana? ¿Dónde estarás el fin de semana? All right, let's look at some questions with why. How do you say, why do you do that in Spanish? Why is ¿por qué? ¿Por qué? Do you do in this case is haces, haces. And that is eso. ¿Por qué haces eso? ¿Por qué haces eso? And how would you ask, why are you doing that in Spanish? We start with ¿por qué? Are you is estás. How do you say doing? Haciendo. And that, eso. ¿Por qué estás haciendo eso? ¿Por qué estás haciendo eso? All right, and in past tense, why did you do that? We'll start with ¿por qué? And the you do is hiciste. And how do you say that? Eso. ¿Por qué hiciste eso? ¿Por qué hiciste eso? Very good. The last question is in future tense. Why will you do that? You try it. ¿Por qué? Will you do is harás. Harás. Eso. ¿Por qué harás eso? ¿Por qué harás eso? You can definitely see some structures with the question words, right? You start with the question word in Spanish, then the verb conjugated to the person and the tense, and then the complement. So you can use these basic questions and change the verbs and start creating your own questions. And to keep learning Spanish, go watch this video next. Muchas gracias.